So I'm going to give a brief statement in response to a press conference that the county attorney recently held today. When the Attorney General's report was released in July, I immediately ordered a thorough review of the Minneapolis police investigative case file. I am confident that the investigators of the Minneapolis Police Department acted with the utmost integrity and professionalism and followed all available evidence to them using investigative best practices. The sole intent of the investigators of the Minneapolis police was to bring justice to the victim in this case. I am concerned that a convicted killer will be set free based only upon a reinterpretation of old evidence rather than the existence of any new facts. That concludes my statement regarding that, and I'll switch to the reason why we're here, the violence that we've been experiencing. Obviously, the last 2 weekends downtown, we've seen an uptick in violence. That has occurred while at the same time, the city has been dealing with violence associated with encampments as well as other community-based violence. While we still have not ruled out a connection between this past weekend's violence and the hit and run the weekend before, we are deeply concerned with what we have seen downtown in that it involves a congregation of juveniles, that teenagers that are coming downtown that are too young to drink, that are congregating in the area of 5th and Hennepin, getting involved in fights and other activities. And we are concerned that in both occasions, their presence has contributed to the disorder that then led to the tragic results that we have seen. I'm thankful that this weekend we received assistance from Hennepin County Sheriff Dewana Witt in the form of sheriff's deputies, both uniformed and plainclothes, and she has committed to helping assist us into the future to address that. We've also received increased assistance from community-based partners, violence interrupters, and other groups that are looking to expand their outreach with us and to try and prevent the conditions that allowed for this to occur. But that being said, we will continue our late night safety plan. We will continue to add additional Minneapolis police officers into this area. And we're going to work with our economic development department to try and address some of the conditions that are down there. We're also going to work with licensing to try and address some of the conditions. Some of the things that community has reported to us and that we have seen that are problematic, that attract a lot of these teenagers, are some of the food vendors that are down there and some of the establishments at times that may have teen parties and other things going on. So these are all things that we're going to look into further with our partners as well as community-based organizations. We're further going to look into trying to work and address curfew in a different way. We're going to try and see if we can have some of our community-based organizations assist us in addressing curfew and try and do that in a way that's different from before. So that being said, that's an overview of what we have going into this next week, and I'll open it up to any questions related to the violence downtown.
Chief, I read one statement that there was many as 100 people out there at this 220. Is that anywhere near accurate?
Certainly at 2 o'clock in the morning, there's hundreds of people getting out of bars downtown. So yes, I believe something like that would be accurate. It is troubling in that especially this last weekend, our officers were dealing with numerous fights that were occurring that precipitated then the shooting. It makes it very, very difficult to try and prevent these things when that's the type of environment that the officers are working in.
And what are these parties or events that people are planning down there?
Yeah, at times there are teen parties. I don't have anything to suggest that that's what happened this weekend, but that has been a draw of teenagers downtown. Separately, we have seen large groups of teenagers that do come downtown late at night, midnight, and beyond, that are just kind of wandering around at that corner and along Hennepin Avenue, and either buying food from some of the food vendors, and at times we are told alcohol. So we're gonna have to look into that further.
People were buying alcohol
On the street, yes. That's the information that we have been told. Yeah. Whether that's from vendors or other people that are providing it for them, yes.
In regards to the food vendors, I know you mentioned licensing. Are you concerned that some of these people down in this area
Yes.
selling who don't have licenses?
Yes, that's been a problem, not just downtown, but also on part of the north side. We have been working with licensing over the last several weeks, and we are trying to get more enforcement around some of these food vendors. Yes.
And then I know you mentioned curfew and that you're going to work with other organizations to do it a different way. What is that going to look like? Like, how is that different from what is maybe being done now? And I guess, how do you enforce curfew when there's
Yes.
the team 20
Yeah.
crowd?
So we'd like to have more community involvement in the enforcement of curfew. And rather than just taking them to a space downtown where they can be immediately released, see if we're able to partner with some of our community-based organizations to do more for that young person, to try and engage better than just simply picking them up and having them immediately released. So that's the initial, that's the thought, and that's the conversations we're going to be in this week.
I was remembering back to the when you spoke after the hit and run. It sounds like there were stepped up patrols downtown, but that kind of happens in that area. There's added patrols right around bar close, but
Yep.
these incidents are obviously happening a little bit before that. Can you speak to when you're talking about some of this additional presence? Are officers going to start being in that area a little earlier, or is that the violence interrupters?
Well, there are people and there are violence interrupters in that area earlier, but this instance this weekend was at 2 a.m., was at bar close. And it does appear that while the problem may start around midnight, it definitely seems like it's at its worst as everyone is also kind of emptying out from bars.
Is there any thought about bringing in the stepped up patrols a little bit earlier? I guess
There are. They have been there earlier, yes.
Okay.
And in addition, we're bringing back the mounted patrols. So there'll be officers on horseback at bar close, which is very helpful because they're much higher above in the crowds. And part of the confusion over this last weekend is the crowd is so dense. Officers were physically present at times when fights were going on and the shooting was close by, but there's just so many people, they couldn't tell who was doing what. So there will be mounted officers down there as well.
And you mentioned you did rule out that the incidents are connected. Is there evidence pointing to that at this point?
I'm not going to comment further. I don't have any specific evidence, to do that. However, it's too much of a coincidence that we're having these problems with young people at this specific corner, and then 1 week later we have a similar instance of violence again with teenagers. I think we need to be open to the fact that the two can be related. Yes.
There was somebody taken into custody in this latest one.
Yep. The investigators are working through to determine the extent of that person's involvement. He has not been booked for shooting. No.
Was it one person responsible for all the injuries, or was it multiple?
In terms of a shooter, I believe we believe it's one individual that was the shooter. However, there was obviously a bit of chaos and fights and other things going on. So not necessarily going to rule out that other people weren't assisting or aiding in an unlawful way.
I'm sorry, I don't get out much. You can kind of set the scene for me at Fifth and Hennepin. You've got a whole bunch of food truck vendors.
Yeah,
People.
that's been an ongoing problem, this year downtown. So there's the vendors and food trucks, and it attracts a lot of the conditions that allow this type of thing to occur. And that's something that we've been trying to deal with our licensing unit. And similarly, on the north side, there's been a similar problem on Washington Avenue, north of Broadway. They've been dealing with kind of a similar problem with vendors up there as well.
Sorry, north of
Washington Avenue,
and
north of Broadway on Washington,
Broadway,
in that area.
How long has that been on your radar? These unlicensed food vendors possibly serving alcohol?
At least the last 2 months. Yeah, and it's not necessarily licensed versus unlicensed. It's operating in ways that are not appropriate for what the license allows.
Understood.
Yep.
Understood.
Can
Yeah.
you describe the strategy going into next weekend? And you mentioned the mounted patrol.
Yep.
I think Hennepin County Sheriff said they
Yep.
expect to be there.
Yep.
Who all is going to be there?
So there'll be additional Minneapolis police officers there. There will be mounted Minneapolis police officers there. There'll be uniformed and plainclothes Hennepin County Sheriff's deputies there. and there will be increased community-based violence organizations that'll be there with us as well.
What's the time frame for the people are gathering? Does it start early at night and then kind of extend and get a little longer?
Starts really after 10 o'clock, but certainly by midnight, the crowds are forming.
What kind of things are they vending other than maybe alcohol illegally?
There's, they're food vendors, different types of food vendors that are out there.
Do you think they're specifically coming there for the food vendors and potentially getting either hands on alcohol, or why do you think they're coming there?
I don't know why teenagers are coming down there. It does seem like it, whatever the original reason is, now it's a thing. It seems like fights are happening, and the social media part of live streaming fights and that kind of thing has sort of added to the attraction to come down there, and that's what we need to break up at this point.
Is it the same group of teenagers, or is it different people every time?
Some of the people have been the same. Yes, some have been the same.
Just
Yes.
We have time for one more question.
I just wanted to clarify on the shooting suspect, that would be a different suspect than the person arrested for sobriety.
We don't know at this time. The person that we have in custody, we're still determining the extent to his involvement in the incident, so we don't know. Yeah.
This has been